Hello and welcome to today's live stream. So yeah, we've had a couple of questions over the last week or two, and I'm just gonna answer some of them. If you've got other questions, like live on the stream, I'm also gonna answer those. So yeah, just basic Q&A stuff this week. And I see that we already have one question. From Andrew. Can you bypass the whole pedal via Midi CCs or something at the moment with the current firmware? No. Which is a bit annoying. But it's not something you can't actually turn off the whole pedal. You can, for Beebo. Obviously, flat 5, you can turn on off any of the rapidly changing cloud cover. Yeah. Flat 5, you can obviously turn on and off the whole, like either side. You can control that fully from Midi. Everything is switchable. Everything you can do with a button or anything, with any touching or feet, you can do with Midi. On Beebo, however, this bypass one, you can't do that bypass from Midi. For reasons. Yeah, mostly because, I haven't really added that yet. It's mostly because it's kind of fiddly for when you have confusing routing setups like I've got right now. The easiest way to do it at the moment is if you've got a wet dry like this, which is a blend of whatever your preset is. And I pretty much, for most presets, it makes sense to have a wet dry at the end of them. Then I would just MIDI learn the wet dry. And if you make that the same CC in every preset, then you just can learn this wet dry, and then that's handy for a bunch of stuff. So you can fade a preset in and fade a preset out over MIDI, or you can just turn it on and off by just controlling this wet dry blend. So I would recommend that's the way to do it. And to CC learn, we've showed this a bunch of times. You hold this one and you press this one, and then you can press this MIDI button here, and it will start flashing, and you can send whichever CC you want over USB, MIDI, or over 3.5mm, and then you can have it the wet dry blend MIDI learn to turn on and off. If that's you can also set it to go to a particular place, obviously, over MIDI, in case you want off to be zero, like a certain amount, and on to be a certain amount of wet. So yeah, that's the way you can do those at the moment. That's not as useful for stuff like amps and stuff like that, obviously. Yeah, so that is a thing that you can't really. You can change presets, obviously, so you can preset change to an empty preset easily. You can change wet dry, things like that. Those are options, but you can't actually disable a module over with the MIDI CC at the moment, or bypass it. So on to some of the other questions. One of the questions I got recently from, actually, I can't remember the name of the person that messaged me. I'm just going to say, there was a question. Gipper, specifically, was the person who asked this question. This question is about, so if you've got some pedals like Beebo here, and you want to run another pedal, they specifically asked about the Chase Bliss Mood, so I have one here. Come to frame. There you go. There's the Chase Bliss Mood, which you can see there. So they asked about having the Chase Bliss Mood in an effect loop. So what we've got here is that we have a wet dry, and I have input 1 coming, that's my guitar input. I have it running into the wet dry, so it's just going to be my dry. And then I also have one running into a delay. And that delay is just going to be the repeats, because remember that there's no dry out from a delay like that. And it's running the repeats of the delay are running out to 3, and 3 is connected up to the input of this mood, and then the output of the mood is running into input 3, 4. It's just mono, so it's running out of 3. So back into my wet dry. So I now will have the repeats of this delay will have the whatever affects the pedals outside, in this case the mood, are doing to the repeats. So if you've got, you know, a really interesting bit crusher that you like the auto bit or something, you can put that on the repeats. And if you've got a pedal that's maybe quite enthusiastic, and you don't want it to be on your dry signal, your actual like playing, you can put it just on the repeats as a send and return effect. So that's what I'm kind of doing here. So if we've currently got the mood flashing here, see, so these. Sorry, it's hard to see in this light. The mood's off at the moment, so we're just going to get the delays effect as, you know, just the normal delay from Beebo. So that's just normal delay. Mixed with the dry, and then as we turn on these ones, we'll get the effect of the mood on the repeats. So you see that the repeats are getting mooded. But you see my dry signal isn't getting it. And we can then just change how much of that we want with our wet dry. So we're getting almost no dry signal there, and then if we go the other direction, we get just a little bit of the so that's how you can run other pedals on your on any other effects as a send. So we can obviously have effects on the return from that as well. So as it comes back in here, we're just running directly into this wet dry. We could instead hold this one and disconnect this input. Now you'll see we're just getting dry. Nothing else is happening. If we can chuck something like a chorus or a flange or a phaser or whatever we want, we'll put a phaser in. Just a basic phaser. That's, we'll leave that as is. And we'll now, with 2 fingers, go phaser to there, and then we'll connect up to the wet. So we've got our phaser there. That phaser will now be on the repeats of the delay that are going through the mood and then getting phased. And we'll go here. We'll think. Hello. Are we doing interesting things? Oops. Yep, sorry. I was just wondering what was going on there. I have connected it up from 2. Sorry about that. There we go. So I'm running into 3. There we go. 3. I was wondering what was going on there. So that's into 3. Sorry, everybody who was shouting along in the comments that I was plugging into the wrong thing. There you go. So now you have phased repeats of a delay going through the mood. And that phasing is happening only on the only to the repeats. So my actual dry is still dry. If I go full dry or full wet, see that's all doing wacky stuff. Over here we'll get just dry, and we can get a little bit in between. So yeah, you notice that now there's no phaser on my dry, but there's lots happening on those repeats. You can, of course, do the same thing if we swap this out, and instead of having a delay in here, we put in one of our pretty reverbs. So let's grab, we're running in mono, so we'll grab mono, reverb, there we go. So we'll go from that one, now out of 3, I'll remember this time. And if we grab, whatever we feel like, EMT plate maybe? Or shall we go for real places? The multitude is, how about this hall in Estonia? Yeah, we'll go for a hall in Estonia. We'll splash pretty hard. And now, you'll see the mood is affecting just the reverb tail. And I've also got that phaser on the repeats of, on the tail of the reverb. We can turn that one over there. If we turn these guys off again, that's just the sound of the reverb. And then as we turn more moody things onto it, and, you know, we can wiggle them. I haven't used the mood for a little bit, so I'm a bit vague about what some of the knobs do, but here we go. Well, that's a bit fun. So we can start wiggling these as you see appropriate. And yeah, you see that's just on the reverb. Obviously you can connect this up to foot switches to turn this all on and off. And now your reverb has phaser on the return of the tails. But your dry signal is still dry. So that's just a bit about how to use other pedals as a send return on a reverb or as a delay. So yeah, you can do that with a phaser, a chorus, before or after. You can obviously filter things like, say, if we just wanted to send the lows to the mood, we could do that by just splitting them up. The Oberheim filter is a good way to do that because it'll give you the band pass, band stop, low pass, and high pass outputs. So just glancing again at the questions. Oh yes, thank you, Matt. Yes, I needed input 3. Yeah, so Andrew asks about the PCM 70. Yes, so there's a bunch of lexicon stuff. If we go up here and we go into mono, that's the 480L, which is all in there. I think the PCM, yeah, there's the PCM 60, sorry, yep. That's in there, if you're asking about them. Then the Lexicon 300s So yes, and there's lots of ones in here. I think the gated ones you're asking about were in the 300s, if I remember correctly. I think they were in here. Maybe. But you'll see, yeah, there's a lot of different reverbs in here. Oh, that's, yeah, because it's still got the phaser on the back. Okay. So yeah, if you do want to add modulation to so obviously IRs can perfectly capture a space. They are entirely accurate for capturing any real reverbing system because real reverbs don't change over time. So they're linear time invariant systems in math speak. And they can be captured perfectly by convolution. However, if you want to have modulation, if you're trying to capture a reverb that has modulation in, it won't work. You have to turn off all modulation in your reverbs to capture them with an IR. You can, of course, then add other modulation in, like having a phaser here on the returns or the mood on the sends. That you can do. And of course you can, do level-based stuff with this as well. There's just that reverb again. Yep. How do you capture... So, yeah, one of the things I wanted to chat about was also capturing these IRs. So, obviously, we've got captures in here of real spaces, and I showed you how to do that. You pop a balloon and you record that balloon, or you can do a sweep. Now, to capture a hardware thing like this 480L, it's actually easier. It's much, much easier. So if you've got a physical unit like a 480L, then you want to do what's called a sweep. You play a sweep through it, and then you use any software that's available to deconvolve it. Ableton Live has a nice IR capturing tool built into it. So if you've got that, a couple of the others, a lot of the other DAWs also have some kind of reverb capture tool in it. Some of them give you them in weird formats, if I remember correctly. I think Logic might stick it in some random format that it's hard to get out. But most of the other ones should just give it, the IRs back to you in a WAV that you can put in anything, and those are easy to export. The only things you'll need, it needs to be in 48 kilohertz, 24-bit is the correct format for Beebo. 16-bit ones will work, but export them in 48 kilohertz, 24-bit. Ones that aren't 48 kilohertz won't work. So that's the only sample rate that you should ever need. So use that one. And yeah, if you're wanting to capture a plugin, first to make sure that it doesn't have modulation in, or you've turned off any modulation for a reverb or a delay, and then you can either do the sweep method and deconvolve it, like we're using something like the Ableton convolution capture thingy, impulse capture of stuff, or which will do a sweep, or you can just play what's called a Dirac pulse. I'm actually not 100% sure how to say his name, but which is a single sample pulse. So you just have one sample of full scale, so 100% volume, a one, a totally on value, one sample, and you play that through your plugin. And the resulting file will be the impulse, the IR. You want to trim off any silence at the start before it, off your IR, and then you just load it into Beebo. There are ways to kind of automate that capture process too. But yeah, that's the thing. You can either download one of those pulses, or you can just generate one yourself. Things like Audacity will have tools to generate, and lots of other things will have tools to generate those direct pulses. So yeah, that's to answer your question, Andrew, about, yeah, that's how you can capture a things like any of these what's called echo plates, EMT plates. You can capture all of them via sweeps or via some type of impulse. Sweeps work better for most of the like analog gear. If you're running like a plugin or something, direct pulses are better. And then obviously for real spaces, you can either do sweeps via speakers, which is fine. It adds some more complexity. It's good for some really big spaces if you've got the right kit, but balloons or starter guns and stuff like that often work better. Sometimes the easy approach. Even actually whacking 2 bits of wood together sometimes works okay in the right size bits of, right size spaces. You want something that isn't going to reverberate, so whacking 2 bits of metal together is problematic because they're going to ring. A starting gun is something, they're perfect. Yeah, so anyway you can get that kind of thing works very well. So yes, thank you. Thanks for your question there. So yeah, one of the other questions I had, so we just showed how to do this external stuff, how to do captures there. One of the other questions I was going to answer, I'll just wiggle this mood back out of the way, and this guy into the middle. Somebody asked about more kind of univibe-ish effects with, which is a question I've got a couple of times, with Flat 5. One of the ways to do those kind of things, so basically you're going to want to start modulating the filters. So we'll calm this down a little bit. I'll just see what I've got going on here. We'll calm this reverb down a little bit. Go for something a little bit less hectic. Let's go for kind of Godot. That's always nice. Yeah, that's good. It's a nice sounding space. We've turned off our other. It's still going through this, but it's not doing anything to it at the moment. Now we'll. So remember, the A side is just gainy things. That does sound nicer than not having it on. There we go. So that's just gain. There's no other controls on that. It's just the diode selection. But if we turn on B, we can then start getting into these filters. And if you want to get univibe, what we're going to jump to the secondary controls. We're going to turn up our our resonance. Turn it up a bit on both filters, maybe a bit more on that one, on the low and the highs. Then this is where it gets weird. We're going to turn it up on the side 1 and side 2, because we don't. Remember, we're going to modulate between these two sides to change things. We're going to start off with our modulation depth right up, and our speed we can leave maybe a here-ish. That's probably fine. Remember, we're on these secondary controls, so speed, low Q, high Q sense. Now we're going to change back to this. So we've got these two lots of controls. So we're going to make this filter be fully open here, and that one fully closed. And then on the other side, we're going to change those. We might crank gain a little bit in that side too. And then we'll see what that sounds like. Okay. That's one side. Down the other side sounds like this. So we're going to modulate between that and that. Okay, and we think, so we might want to go that a little bit lower. And that, because remember this is going to be the, oops. Sorry, that's somebody calling me. Ah, they can go away. It's all right. Next time we'll turn that on silent. So that's, you're like, oh, okay, that doesn't sound super interesting, but remember this is kind of the target that it's going to be modulating to. And that sounds quite interesting. So, and this is going to be the other one. And yeah, so this is the other one. Relatively like full range sound. So now when we start modulating those guys, that's much more, there's a lot going on. Now, as I said, we were going for full range to start with, this full depth of modulation. Now we can turn that down a little bit to see if we want, because we started off with it like, really obvious, and we can turn it down to a level that we feel kind of more comfortable with. See, so that's a bit more subtle now. I often like to set the ranges up. Obviously, you can do it in a couple of different ways because you are blending between two different presets. So there's kind of two different ways you can control the depth by just having the two presets be more similar or having them. But right now, see, I've got that. And you'll see the modulation is much smaller. You've just got a little bit of things going on. And then, yeah, so... And obviously you can change the curve, the actual wave shape as well. And obviously it'll sound much more aggressive with the square wave. Which is obviously less univibey. But one of the nice things is, we don't necessarily have to go for exact recreations. And if you want, you can start to tremolo the opposite direction, things like that, make it, be more distorted in one of the angle, one of the directions, for instance. So if we turn these guys off, we can go to our secondary side, we can crank gain even more up. And see, that'll be quite... As it gets closer to this, it will get more distorted as well. So now... it'll be it's getting a little bit more gain. As it gets more filtered, it's also getting more gainy. Yeah, so that's how to do some of those kind of more univibey, but more kind of filtery kind of sweep effects. Obviously, you can do them on just the lows and highs as well. Having a bit of modulation on the low is pretty fun on bass. So, if we did... I'm obviously playing a guitar, but imagine that's chunkier. It can get kind of chunky sounding. So that's just doing a little bit about that. I'll just glance if there's other questions. Okay. Sorry that our brightness has gone up a bit now. Hopefully you can still see everything. Alas, the sunshine that is directly above me changes over time and is quite sunshiny. Andrew asks a question of how do you do micro pitching? I did show it last week. I can show it again. Time stretch is definitely what I would recommend. If you're saying left and right, I would definitely recommend running time stretch. You can set it up, you can either use two time stretches and pitch them differently to the sides, but your time stretch is stereo. So you can use the spread parameter. Use the spread parameter with time stretch. And then you say you want some chorus after that. Well, stack and chorus and on particular bits is easy. You just do them. You also say you want 8-bit chorus. And I don't really know what specifically you mean by 8-bit chorus. If you mean kind of... So we've got a couple of different chorus algorithms. One's the J chorus, which is based off the Journo, the Roland Journo. And then there's the dimension chorus, which is based off having 8 separate voices of chorus. So they're both in... I can chuck them in here on this reverb instead of the delay. Yeah, if you type in chorus, you'll see both. You can, of course, make your own choruses as well. They're all options. Chorus. This D is an 8-voice multi-dimensional chorus, which just means it's got 8 different delay lines, obviously. Because that's how choruses work. Basically, you have modulating delay lines, so this one's got 8 of them. So it ends up being pretty chunky. However, so you've got these parameters, so that gives you the chorus options. However, you said you wanted 8-bit kind of stuff. So I assume that means you want something like bit crushing, bit mangling. Obviously, mangling is much more aggressive than crushing in the vocab we use in Beebo. Mangling is when you're doing things like bit operations, so you like things like XOR or ANDs or ORs, when you're like doing something weird to the bits. They often end up very, very distorted and very aggressive sounding. Bit crushing is, bit reduction is usually a different sounding effect. Sample rate reduction is also interesting. We don't do much in the way of sample rate reduction at the moment. Bit crushing is easy to do though. So say we want to have this, we'll get rid of this phaser and we'll chuck a chorus in here instead. Chorus goes in here. We can have a bit crusher on this, we'll just search for bits. We'll have bit crush delay, so we can run that directly if we want. But we can have this bit crusher. Or this vinyl thing, that's kind of fun too. Say we have this bit crusher. We can have that on the send to the chorus. So then our choruses will be on this bit crushed thing, which maybe you do it the opposite way round in case you want to have your, let's out left to wet. So you've got your chorus going on here. Oh, we'll also turn this guy off. So delay up a little bit. Now we'll turn our bit crush. So at full quality, it will obviously sound, obviously 16-bit sounds arguably identical to the actual input. Sorry, it is once again getting a bit bright. I might chuck a delay in here just because that's probably going to be a little bit more obvious than the reverb. Both are easy to do things with, but the delay gives you obviously, more time, usually. So we'll chuck a delay in here. We'll route that out to 2-3 again. Obviously you can do this without doing the looping thing, but just because I've got the mood over there. And we turn our wet dry down to give us a bit of... Oh, I've done it again. Sorry. I keep getting used to running through out of 2. There we go. I was just confused what was going on there. There we go. So instead I want to connect 3 up to the bit crusher. There we go. Yep. That's why I couldn't have it here. I was like, the reverb didn't sound like it was doing very much. Yes. Yes, Lockie. So yeah, now we've got this delay that's running through things, and so we're at full quality here, so we'll just, it's getting chorused, but it's not getting anything much of it. But as we go down here, you see that it start getting crushed. As you get lower, it starts to get more crushed and gets really kind of... Yeah, which may or may not be what we want, but that's the gist. So yeah, you can have things like that, stack effects like that quite easily. And of course, I've got this one over here on the sand as well, so that can be quite fun. Oh yeah, Big Hector. Give me a yell if you send me an email if you need to give me a yell. I thought I followed up with your one. But yeah, give me a yell if you need to. If there's any issues. Yeah, I'm always usually around on emails, but sometimes the spam filter might eat them, but either way, we should always hopefully find them and respond to you. So yeah, give us a yell if you've got an issue. So yeah, that's most of the things I was wanting to show today. So there's some, showed off some modulation over on flat 5 here, showed off, explained how to do sandy loopy things. There is one thing you might notice if you're sending stereo out to another pedal and you get perfect cancellation, like you get no sound when you turn on the other pedal. This might be a thing as well, yeah. So if you're going through another pedal, you turn on the pedal or turn on Beebo or whatever, and you get perfect cancellation, you get no sound out. And you're like, but when I turned it on, well, either you've got the thing like bypass or something, no dry scent. One of the options is that if your pedal is doing something like it's not doing separate stereo processing and it's doing some kind of different ways of splitting and adding the stereo signal together, it might be adding those two stereo signals together, and if they're perfectly out of phase, either we're sending out two stereo signals that are differently phased somehow because of something you've done, they could cancel perfectly. If you think that that's the case, that the other pedal is either inverting phase when it takes in a stereo signal, or that the one you're sending into is inverting phase or something like that, or one of your loopy things is causing it to have inverted phase, you can invert the phase of any of the outputs or any signal in Beebo as well, which you can do with the attenuverter. The attenuverter, and probably other ways. The attenuverter is easy though. So yeah, attenuverter, you plug your signal into this and you turn one of the input you haven't plugged a signal into, so if you plugged it into A, you can turn B all the way down to -1, and that'll just invert the signal that's going through it. So yeah, interconnect mode you'll need on if you're going to do it to an audio signal. But yeah, you can attenuvert any signal like that to change its phase. So yeah, if anybody else has got any last minute questions, please ask. Yeah, Diego, please send through an email if I need to follow up on that one. Yeah, if you've got any other questions, feel free to ask them in the last minute. Otherwise, yeah, if you've got any questions on, if there's anything you want to see in future videos, feel free to ask them. These are just a few ideas that people asked about. Thank you as always for being involved in the live streams. Yeah. Give me a yell if there's anything else. Oh, I think I mentioned the other one. Yeah. Somebody was talking about the amp capture for Hector and capturing non-ampy things with it, like distortion boxes in Eurorack land. That will work as long as they're not changing over time. So the NAM stuff will capture stuff that doesn't have long-term time effects. So stuff like valves have got sort of, they're non-linear systems, so they've got time effects, but they'll capture correctly, but stuff like delays and stuff won't. Oh, Matt has a question about the flat 5. How long did it to create the flat 5? Way too long. Just way too long. Flat 5 actually, so I showed the first prototype for flat 5 before I showed the first prototype for Beebo. The first version, the first kind of iteration and idea behind it was called Mood. No, it wasn't correct. Morph. I got these confused. This is called Mood. It was called Morph. I am nailing this. It was called Morph. It was green, and I showed it at NAMM in 2019. And I'd been working on it for a while then, but I wasn't quite contented with it. And then Josh Smith tried it there, and he liked it and this, and so I went into his studio and he played with it a bit, and he had some ideas and I had some ideas, and there was a couple of ideas I had that didn't work very well, so I tried a bunch of different stuff. So actually, Flat 5 took a couple of years. One of the challenges was this touch interface. I really wanted it because it's so visible to work out what's going on. And I liked that kind of idea of being able to see things and, being able to see what, this preset is a different color. I liked those ideas. I was, however, a fool for liking that because it took a long time to get right. It was, obviously using knobs would have been a lot easier. The first prototype had knobs and that took, minutes. This one took years. So mistakes were made. It was a good learning experience. So it took a while. To quickly answer your question, a couple of years. Not always the best choices I made, but it's quite cool now. So Thank you, Matt. I'm happy that you think it's worth the wait. It was a long wait. For anybody who tried Morph in 2019 when this came out in 2023, it was a long wait. But some other stuff had much quicker turnarounds. So a lot of the analog and digital interaction was a bit fiddly to get smooth. There was a few things I wanted to do nicely, and it was hard to do them. Anyway, thank you very much for everybody for watching today. Again, always great to do these, and if you've got any other questions, always send them through, and I will answer them on the next live stream. Thank you.